So, hello everyone. I would like to welcome you to the special episode of Disruption Talk. Most of you probably don't know my face yet, as this is my first time taking part in this event. I'm a senior consultant at Netguru, and I am focusing on innovation strategy for retail. I will be happy to share my experience today with you, both on the client and agency side. Why is this a special episode? Because the topic is hot and we were wishing to discuss it ASAP. And besides the topic being hot, we will be focusing on why haven't virtual try-ons been still widely implemented and why we remain bullish on the outlook of virtual try-ons. And today joining me will be Grzegorz Mrukwa. Grzegorz, are you here?
Hello. Yep, I'm here. Thanks.
So Grzegorz, who is professionally a data science manager and personally also a fan of data science. Is that true, Grzegorz?
Definitely. Honestly, I started my career from data science at the beginning. So, yep, definitely. I love it for many years already. Let's proceed with data science further on.
Sure thing. And also joining us will be Jinger Kang, who is professionally an innovation consultant lead, but personally a fan of consulting luxury brands. Is that right, Jinger?
That is correct, David. I've had the opportunity to work across lots of industries. I've enjoyed them all greatly, but I do have a personal love for retail, especially luxury retail.
We all know that well in the department. I would like to inform to our audience that if any questions should arise, feel free to post them in the comments section anytime, and we'll try to pick them up as the show goes on. If not, we will be happy to discuss them at the end of the webinar. Okay, so guys, if we could start with the basics. I would say it took us 10 years to get from the initial solutions to the solutions that are appealing to our customers. Do you remember these times, these 10 years ago first solutions? What do you recall?
For me personally, I remember Converse in 2012 had an app in essence. It wasn't quite an app, but a way that you could digitally try on their sneakers. Very different to what's available now, but it was nice and exciting to see at the time.
Grzegorz, do you recall?
I do not remember the exact brands, but it was quite a manual process where you had like kind of a photo and you were just moving your face around just to fit the photo so you could try on your hair, a new hair that could be in barbers, or you could try on new glasses or something like that. But it was rather like you had a kind of a template and moving just your photo to fit a specific template.
Yeah, so when it comes to augmented reality, the first solution I remember was focused on glasses. What turned out later, as the years went by, I was also involved in glasses brand, and we also had a virtual try-on solution. Therefore, I have quite a few insights, as I said, on the client side. So if I could ask our team to present us some numbers to show why do we believe that virtual try-on will stay with us for much longer. So we can see what is the market size value in 2021 in US dollars. We can see what is the annual growth rate, and that more and more customers, actually right now 36% of Americans are interested in trying both clothes, jewelry, shoes, thanks to virtual reality. I would say that the tipping point, as we previously discussed, Jinger, I believe you remember that the tipping point is still yet to come. We're not still there. We can see like a boom again going on right now. Would you agree with that, Jinger?
Yeah, I would agree so. I think there's been so many predictions of various tipping points within retail that we're still waiting for a lot to happen. But when it comes to virtual try-on, we're not close yet to that tipping point.
Definitely. I would totally agree as well. I think that there is much that can be observed right now, and that's why I would like to ask you, especially what's on the market today. We asked our audience, our clients, our customers, our followers on different social medias, what are the top things they would love to try on virtually before buying. And I would say the answers spread it quite evenly, even though 36% told us that shoes would be their number one solution, or their number one product. I would agree with that, especially that the shoes solutions are becoming more and more appealing to customers. What would be your comments on that topic? I would like to ask both Jinger and Grzegorz, when it comes to products, what should be our next stop? Is there a next stop to be, or the future will show which way we go?
So I remember seeing that poll, and I did answer, and I answered glasses, but I was very biased in the sense that I believed the technology, and Grzegorz, I'm sure, will argue this point, the technology was better suited to certain items. And the experiences that I've seen to date were also better suited to those items. And shoes, sneakers, etc., seem like the next sensible evolutionary step. If we think about ideally what I would like to see, it would be clothing. But there are a lot of barriers in the way of finessing that experience at the moment. But we have seen major improvements in the last 12 to 24 months. So my fingers are crossed that I'll be able to virtually try on actual items of like a jacket, a suit, these types of items with correct and proper fit. But currently, shoes, sunglasses, I believe, was my actual answer. Seem to make the most sense in that next evolutionary step in virtual try-ons.
So my answer was clothing, but I believe the number of variables that is there, and I would say it applies as well to glasses, is so big that it can be quite challenging for it to be the next product. What would you say, Grzegorz, on that topic?
Well, basically, if you consider how those solutions are constructed and which of those could be the easiest to achieve, I think that all those elements which are not so closely tied to someone's body, so definitely not clothes, but all the jewelry stuff, all the elements with glasses, potentially shoes also, could be something that is like a low-hanging fruit, because you can do a lot to provide a real authenticity of the feeling. And when it comes to clothing, there is some issue with sizing, for example. So there are some differences in size which may be quite hard to grasp with virtual try-on, especially when you have different sizes. There are some little nuances between each person that will be hard to be reflected with either machine learning or any other kind of augmented reality approach. Even with a shoe, it may be a kind of an issue, because we are still lacking the part that whether the shoe fits us perfectly, not only via look, but also via feel on our toes. But well, from the visual perspective, it is definitely something that is pretty easy to be achieved as compared to clothes, which are pretty close to our body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think also what is important when it comes to shoes, especially looking from the customer's point of view, is I'm a big fan of shoes myself, and what is very important to me is actually how they match my trousers, how they match my shirt, how I look, how my whole body looks wearing these special shoes. And even though the solutions are getting better and better, you're aiming the screen at your feet. You can see what is going on with your feet, but you cannot see your full body. And I think that a solution focusing on that might as well be quite a big game changer. And when it comes to sunglasses, what you said, the number of variables, the number of different parts that vary among different people, I can tell you that being involved for quite a few years in the glasses market, I know how really small details make a difference. So similar glasses might look great on the shelf next to each other. They seem almost identical. If you put them behind your ears, on your face, you can see that they are something completely different. Therefore, any variables when it comes to cheeks, when it comes to the width of the head or the temple tip, how long should it be to cover the ear? These are huge changes, especially to a very intimate product like glasses.
Yeah, but that's a really interesting point. I think I want to kind of hit on 2 points you made there, David. So as someone who's broken his nose 4 times, glasses have a tendency to sit very funny on my face. But that's something that's quite difficult these days to get that nuance correct. But the other thing about when you were mentioning about shoes is, like you, I want to see how it complements what I wear on a day-to-day basis. And I think there are a lot of shoe virtual try-on solutions at the moment, but they don't really hit that nail on the head. There's still that gap in that experience, right? And that look and that feel, etc. So there's still work to do, even for shoes. I think it's the next evolutionary step, as I said, but I just want to pick up on one of the comments I read in the panel. I was listening to you,
Sure.
David, I promise. But it's from Adrian.
That's what I'm doing right now as well. I'm reading the comments.
Fantastic. So it was from Adrian. It's about cosmetics. And if I'm being honest, cosmetics are probably one segment of the sector that are doing it really, really well at the moment. So you have L'Oreal, Sephora are leading. Sephora have been pushing this for a long time. But you also have MAC and Chanel. I can't remember what it's called. The new lipstick app from Chanel that was released a couple of months ago. So they're making good headway, but it's also the channels they're looking to utilize in order to meet the consumers. So I believe Mac, I could be wrong, but I think it's the Mac one where it's available via YouTube, for example. So you can watch the videos and then press a button and virtually try on the lipstick within the video and then different shades. Playing around with this, I've learned very quickly that Diva is my shade of lipstick, just to let you all know, right? But yeah, it's a slightly, and I don't want to use the term easier, but it's a little bit more mature within the virtual try-ons, the area of cosmetics and makeup. And I can see why, because there's a lot less variables that would be detrimental to the final output.
Yeah, I think it's quite natural for all of us that if we think about cosmetics, when we think about putting, thanks to augmented reality, some color on your lips, on your cheeks, it seems a little bit easier compared to trying on sunglasses or spectacles. Grzegorz, would you agree with that on the technological side?
Definitely not, especially that if you enter this part of domain when it comes to virtual try-ons, there is a lot of details happening on what actually can be on your lips, because there is a lot of different effects that you can apply on top of a specific shade. So applying all those effects can be actually really challenging on the level of machine learning model or any other kind of a solution that you apply, because those effects may completely different behave on top of specific shade. Sometimes this is some kind of a glowing, sometimes it may be some small dots on the actual shade. Sometimes it may be kind of a matte or additional light reflexes. It is pretty complex because here we have a lot of different variables. The light changes, all the elements of the skin tone, all the elements of lips color, the natural color, etc. This is not so important when you are trying on clothes, because it is quite unlikely that your skin tone will go through the t-shirt. I know sometimes it may happen, though on the visual try-on is quite unlikely. And while with all those cosmetics products, it may be quite natural that the cosmetic product actually underlines your real colors of your body.
Yeah, so this only presents how big experience in Netguru it is when it comes to virtual try-on solutions, because I wouldn't even have thought on that. I wasn't involved in anything connected with cosmetics and virtual try-on so far, but your insights, Grzegorz, when it comes to specifically this area are amazing. Another part of the chain, another product group of products that I think we can discuss is jewelry. As some time ago, we were focusing on proof of concept for one of our clients when it comes to jewelry segment. What do you think about that? I know that both of you have some experience with that. Would you say that it's a great solution? I believe many of our guests right now, many of people from our audience are involved in the luxury brands sector. Would you say that it might be a nice next step for the sector?
I think it could be a very important step, and I'm going to use the idea that when people talk about virtual try-ons, we have a tendency to focus on that end user experience and the benefits for the end user, which is our key. We should still be focusing on that. But we also need to think about the impact at a business level that virtual try-ons could potentially have. And if we think about jewelry, especially pieces that cost upwards of hundreds of thousands of pounds, these are normally one-off pieces or pieces that are in certain locations. So in order to try these on currently, it involves an element of shipping, which also could potentially increase other behaviors within the consumer. So things like hesitation in the purchase experience, but also that ability to look elsewhere for a similar product. So that ability to not only reduce those transportation costs, but also be able to present your full inventory to clients extremely quickly would be extremely beneficial.
Okay.
Let's speak how it's possible and not possible now.
When it comes to your when it comes to your experience, because luxury brands, jewelry are definitely a sector, a product that we would like to present great quality. How does it look like when it comes to your experience?
Well, always the challenge is how to make the virtual try-on not to look funny. Because if you go funny, that's not a sales tool, that's an entertainment tool. Okay, it may make people talk about your brand, but that's not the goal that you want to achieve. So in such a case that you described, you want the experience to be top-notch. So usually there are some approaches which allow you to paste some 3D models, and there are some approaches that try to guarantee some authenticity. But actually here we need to make sure that we are not just making a person to see the ring on her hand or on her finger, but actually if we want to have a really great experience, we should think of how could we fool a gemologist when looking at the specific stone or at the specific piece of jewelry. So we make sure that all the light reflexes are the same, etc. When we are designing this kind of a unique experience, it is supposed to be luxurious, so we can provide some additional steps. Sometimes all the solutions that are just box solutions, which are already prepared and you can just deploy them, they do not take into account some additional steps that you could make during the sales ceremony, for example. So they may not look so realistic, but the effect is still achievable on your side. So you can put some constraints on how the virtual try-on is used in the sales process. You can do some constraints on how the hand pose or body pose is collected, and then using that information, how those conditions are satisfied during the production time. When your virtual try-on is already deployed, you can achieve much better results, much more authentic, than using a just box solution or a solution that was made for any purpose, for any lighting conditions, etc.
Just to add, or to go back to my point as well, that virtual try-ons shouldn't be a bolt-on or created within a vacuum, and it's that consideration of the entire service, as Grzegorz said. So considering it from start to finish, and the role that virtual try-ons are there to play, and at what moments they can potentially wow the consumers, but also guide them along this journey.
So Grzegorz actually touched two very interesting topics. Maybe we could start with the one that is more focused on the business side of our talk. Would you say that virtual try-on itself is a selling tool? Because that's what Grzegorz touched. What do you think, Jinger? I don't want to tell you what is my attitude. I will end up with that.
I'll ask you next, yeah, for sure. So I think it's dependent, and it's dependent on how you look to incorporate virtual try-ons. For me, I think in the future, it will definitely lead that way. And for some already, it is a channel for purchase. But it's also about the ability to purchase from anywhere, and virtual try-ons will eventually give you that. Now, we've seen the growth of social commerce. So for me, social commerce and virtual try-ons seem like they could be good bedfellows. We've seen the new lenses, for example, launched on Snapchat, and how that could lead into an experience, and eventually, ideally, into that idea of a virtual try-on. It's almost like you would be able to incorporate those first and second moments of truth all within that that 0 moments of truth. So rather than it being a linear journey, as you would normally see in a retail purchase experience, you could look to, in essence, combine these all through virtual try-ons.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. From my experience, virtual try-ons, especially the way they were a few years back, they were used as a gadget, as a marketing tool. They could be used in the initial part of the selling funnel, but it wasn't as a tool that actually converted. People spent a lot of time focusing, playing with the solution, whatever the product might be, but it's not a solution that would definitely convert. Would you, Grzegorz, yourself buy right now already a product just after virtually trying it on?
Well, my buying process is a little bit more complicated, so I would not comment on that. Basically, when it comes to virtually trying anything, well, I'm not so convinced, because I'm a specific customer, I'm a specific buyer. I usually have a specific model on my mind, so I just go to the shop, I select specific model, specific size, voila, it's bought. So that may not be the representative case. So I think we should rather refer to polls.
I thought that you would say that you have a machine learning model that decides whether you can buy a certain product or not.
It automates purchasing, right?
Yeah, everything automated, but I like your idea as well.
And I think, sorry, Dave, to interrupt, but we had that conversation, you and I, a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's the idea of it should and it could potentially be a purchase channel, but it should also be considered as a potential pit stop during that purchase journey, right? So that ability to reduce those moments of hesitation, to let the consumer experience the product itself, to find out what they need to and comparatively see how it does against other similar products, right? So being able to bring these things all into that element of self-control for the consumer within their kind of patience, and that element of allowing them to personalize where possible. All of these things are the potential of virtual try-ons, right? So that ability to end your journey at virtual try-ons should exist, but it should also be considered for the rest of the journey as well.
That's a full answer to what we touched, I believe. But I would also like to get involved, Grzegorz, again a little bit more, as I believe many people from our audience, that's what they are here for, to know whether the technology is ready, whether we can, as Netguru, actually already have some influence on their business, or is it still a gadget? What Vlad Bartkowiak asked in one of the comments is, I will quote, "Is there any solution for glossy products as of now? Because light reflectors are quite important part of a product, but also really hard to implement." And I know, Grzegorz, that we have some experience in that. You already touched that topic a little bit, but maybe you could explain to Vlad what solution do we see in the future, or are ready right now?
I will rather focus on how we approach this topic right now, because it's not an easy task, definitely. I would not focus on the ready solutions, because all the cases where we want to reproduce light reflections pretty exactly are rather based on some serious assumptions. So, for example, when we are talking about the experience where you can make a specific station of a virtual try-on, like in a jewelry that you mentioned, where you do not have the product on site and you just want to make a place in your shop for a virtual try-on where we know all the lighting conditions. This is something that gets much easier to reproduce, because we can control the lighting conditions, and having some training data, having some reference points with those specific lighting conditions are usually enough for reproducing this on a virtual try-on as well. So we are controlling not how the AR or virtual try-on reproduces the lighting conditions. We make sure that the lighting conditions stay the same. If that's not possible, there are some approaches that we can apply. However, depending on a specific product that is supposed to be tried on, and those tactics may differ, because first of all you need to identify what are the sources of light in the photo that you have, what were the sources of light in the photo from which you want to transfer the product, for example, how those reflexes work. You can do some specific procedure for collecting the data to make sure that you have reflexes from all the different angles, etc., and then transfer that data. But the process of data collection is quite complicated in such a way. So we need to focus on a specific case and to understand how those shining effects, how those reflexes should be replicated. In some products, in clothing, for example, it's not so important, so it is often omitted, especially that we can save a lot of money without those light reflexes. With jewelry, it will be extremely important, especially if we can tell the difference of different stones in the ring just based on the light reflexes on the stone itself when visually trying it on, and we want to make the feeling as authentic as possible. So regarding this specific part of reflexes, there are different tactics, and this actually highly depends on a specific product that you want to try on and on the process in which you embed the virtual try-on.
Definitely. Thank you, Grzegorz, for your answer. Again, you've inspired me to few other questions. I've written them down not to forget, but I would address another question to you again. You mentioned data collection. When you and me, and also I've spoken to Jinger, as he mentioned, not so long ago, about virtual try-ons, you just mentioned the data collection. I believe the input required to implement such solution can be challenging. What would you say about that when it comes to Netguru's experience?
Well, it highly depends on the kind of a solution that you want to implement. There are some specific requirements that we usually get from our clients. Those requirements may, for example, include that our customer do not want to retrain the model because that is connected to a cost, that they want to flexibly extend the library of products for a try-on of a specific kind of product, of course, because it is still fixed to a specific kind of a product. We often try to take those assumptions in the account, and it highly influences the data collection procedure and kind of data that we require. So for example, if you need a really high resolution, if you need high frame rate, etc., we will need a lot of videos recorded in similar conditions from which we can take those products. If you just want to process photos, often it may be sufficient to just look for similar photos on the net and then use just some photos that you can provide with your specific products. So you do not need to actually gather millions of photos by yourself, but we can scrub the internet and up to the point where it is allowed, of course, and use those photos to pre-train the model and then tune it up to your specific products. And there are also different approaches where you, by definition, require a 3D model, for example, because the principle of operation is slightly different. So we gather from a customer a 3D model, and the 3D model is actually placed on the virtual try-on. It looks a little less realistic, I would say, because it is just a 3D model. It is not a transfer of a real product. It is just putting a 3D model on a photo. But well, this is still a solution. You can still try on a product. So it highly depends on your expectations towards the virtual try-on.
Mm-hmm. I think you've might partially answered Helen's client's question, as she asked, is there experiences in 3D scans of people in combination with virtual try-ons? I would love to hear, Helen, whether that was actually your question, or you mentioned more 3D scans of silhouettes of different people. I would love to hear more from you. And another question that you, Grzegorz, inspired me about a few moments back, and I would like to ask Jinger. You mentioned, Grzegorz, that when it comes to light, when they are great, if we standardize the light that is in the room, it's much easier. Where can we standardize the room? We can standardize it in brick and mortar stores, in the fitting rooms. We can have the same lighting in every store of any brand that we can imagine. What would you, Jinger, say is the differentiation between virtual try-ons, as we just discussed, and virtual fitting rooms in brick and mortar stores? How would you, what are the commons of these two solutions, and what differentiates the both? So
I would say they're pretty much should be considered the same thing in the fact that they're both virtual try-ons, right? But what I think is in store, you have more opportunity to push computational power. And going to Helen's question, the idea of using body scanners, etc., placed around a fitting room in a physical environment might enable a much smoother experience than having to have someone walk around you with your mobile phone if you want that true fit, right? And there are a couple of companies that have actually been working on something similar. I know Modern Mirror in Canada, for example, launched something at the beginning of this year, which looked to scan people's bodies, and then the next step is that virtual try-on and better fit. And there's also what I can't pronounce it, but Wacol, they released something last month, but it's a mobile app, and it's called My Bra Fit, but it's that idea of better fit. So the idea of body scan is very important in order for that experience to really be beneficial, right? When it comes to retail, brick and mortar and virtual fitting rooms, it's a complementary product, right? I can see it working extremely well hand in hand with the bricks and mortar stores. But when it comes to online, I see it as potentially being a better experience and almost a replacement of current online channels. I'm not sure if that answered your question, David.
Yeah, I think more or less, yes. I think that when it comes to computing, thanks to developing cloud solutions, the computing can be high efficiency computing can be both implemented in virtual try-ons online and also in virtual fitting rooms. But I see hardware as accessible hardware as a great advantage when it comes to virtual fitting rooms.
I would be careful with a statement that cloud can be a support here, because if you consider especially how much computational power you require for a virtual try-on, there is usually a really high need for that. So this is, for example, why the virtual try-on applications on your mobiles are appearing pretty recently. There is not like a 5 years old or 10 years old mobile application with a virtual try-on. They are pretty new, and all the frameworks that are out there for virtual try-ons, for some LiDARs, etc., these were introduced for the top-notch phones, pretty recent flagships. For example, the newest iPhones, etc. So here you have a pretty great support, and you have pretty great computational power. In most cases, you will like to push the computational power need to your user. So we want to make the processing on the side of customers or a user web browser, or we want to make the processing on the side of his mobile phone, or when we are talking about a brick and mortar store, in store, not to drain computational resources in cloud, because you would need potentially a single GPU machine per user, and with thousands of users on your web page online, it could be a pretty heavy challenge to maintain it from financial point of view.
Yeah, so that's usually what happens between the two of us. So me and Jinger think, okay, let's do it. We can do whatever we want. And that's when Grzegorz experience comes to place, and he tells us, no, guys, it's not that easy. You can think of whatever you want, but making it happen is totally different thing. And it's a great thing that we have such people on board, and we can slowly, step by step, implement some solutions that make us closer to the solution that is really high class, meeting all of our demands that we can imagine of. And what you touched, Grzegorz, again, I don't know whether you did it on purpose, is something that Stanislas Martin asked. So he told us, he asked us, or actually he claimed that web apps are something completely different to the specific apps that have to be downloaded, because when it comes to customer journey, such big effort that is expected from our customer, brand's customer, is huge. Like, if we can make it happen on web, I see it myself. If we can make it happen on web, that's a completely different thing. If we ask him to download the app, no, the customer journey can easily be broken.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Sorry, I was just gonna. Grzegorz, you carry on.
Sure. This is specifically take into account that this is specifically a matter of customer journey, because anyway, you need to download the machine learning model or a machine learning solution to your device. Whether you load it via web page or you load it via mobile application, that doesn't matter. But Anyway, you download the machine learning model to your device. It can be encrypted, it can be decrypted, whatever. But still, if it takes like 100 megabytes or it takes like 20 megabytes, depending on the size of the model, this may be a pretty high traffic, especially when someone is on mobile device and in the shop without Wi-Fi connection. So re-downloading this model each time could also be something pretty challenging for a customer. I know when you have LTE connection or 5G or something, and that will happen in a blink of an eye, but we need to take into account that this data is downloaded each time someone visits a web page, unless some technical conditions appear when you can do some caching, but it is still debatable whether it will save enough data or not. And yet, there is a lot of technical depth in such a setup when we are considering virtual try-on in a web browser on a cell phone. It could be problematic because with mobile application, you can limit functionality to specific devices. As I mentioned, actually the newest device has the best support. So especially when you are rolling out MVP, you want to target the newest devices because the effort is the lowest. And with web browser solution, you cannot do that. That may be okay, that may not be okay, but it may simply break the feeling of your customers if the virtual try-on will work with 1 FPS or 2 FPS, and they will want to look at their shoe, which is virtually tried on at different angles, and they will need like 2 minutes to just look how it looks like from different perspectives. So it is much more complex topic, I would say.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I've seen a web solution, web mobile solution that enabled to try on shoes, but as you mentioned, it was highly simplified. So I could only try one specific pair of shoes, and I know that as you said, scaling it up, and that's the most important thing. Of course, we can have one product that we present, but that's not the case. We are a brand producing different kind of products, the products that change season by season. We want to implement them in the virtual try-on system every now and then. So the scalability, I think, is also a very, very important factor. What would you say regarding that, Jinger?
I agree. So you have that idea that web is also a very important outlet here. But it's also the channels. So what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of big tech companies entering this space, and that gives you the opportunity to reach the audience in places where they already are, which is one of our golden rules in retail, right? But your experience still needs to be considered. And I want to kind of pivot slightly to Michał's kind of question here, and that idea that a poorly orchestrated try-on can actually discourage a consumer instead of helping them making a purchase decision. So what I've seen a lot of recently is people trying to utilize these new channels, but not really putting in the know-how and the expertise and the experience design side of things. And as a result, you end up with something that is not sympathetic towards a brand image or tone of voice or anything like that. And that can have a very detrimental effect on your final consumer, right?
David, I'm afraid you're muted.
Oh, sorry for that. So I forgot to unmute. So an interesting question from Janeta is jumping back. We will be jumping back to the business topic, but that's what we do in Netguru on a daily basis, right? Jumping from business to technology. That's what me and Jinger are here for. So Janeta asks, do you think that those luxury brands that will not follow the new virtual try-ons trend will be left behind? That's a very interesting question when it comes to business strategy. And I'm looking at you, Jinger, again.
So it depends, and it depends on your outlook on the future of retail. And I'm going to be extremely biased to my own outlook, and I think eventually virtual try-ons would almost become a hygiene factor. I think it will offer a lot of benefits for retailers in the future of all sizes, and it can help in reducing massive pain points in the current business models of most retailers, namely the idea of returns and the bid issue that causes. So for me, I would say eventually, yes, it will be a have and have nots of the industry. And as we see more and more people of younger than me generations interacting with augmented realities and finding it comfortable to use, I think retailers will really need to consider that not doing this could lead to them being left behind.
Yeah, if I was to answer this question, I would say that it depends, as it is usually the best answer to most of the questions. I believe that the sales funnels of different companies differ that much, especially when it comes to luxurious brands, that you can have a completely different attitude. You can aim a little bit towards younger generations. You can fully focus on generations that are a little bit older. Therefore, what is the most important thing, I would say, is to make it consistent, the whole sales funnel, the whole marketing funnel, for it to be consistent step by step, being consistent. Each step should be really thinking through. And in some cases, virtual try-on will be a very good solution in some of the funnels. In some of them, I would say that wouldn't be 100% necessary, and we would be very happy to listen to a sector. What do they think to that answer? I see, Jinger, that you want to mention something else as well.
Yeah, so I think you're right. It is dependent on what type of a retailer you are, and for some it just wouldn't make sense, especially if we go down that route of 3D modeling, because your lines change so quickly. But then also we have to consider that retail is shifting, or has shifted in some places, to a more purpose-driven consumer mindset, right? And virtual try-ons have the ability, in theory, to reduce waste. So the environmental impact of virtual try-ons could also be beneficial for brands as they look to communicate with audiences. So we're looking at that idea of reducing bulk buying, reducing returns. That could be one way, because people would be more confident in their purchase choices, and once again, in theory. And in reducing those returns, you can also avoid unsustainable business models. So that's also worth remembering. Regardless of size, it could be beneficial to your business model as well.
Great. Thanks for that. I would just love to remind our audience that we have more or less 10 minutes remaining. So if you have any questions that you're thinking whether you should or should not ask, definitely do so. So maybe we have a few minutes still to answer them. My next question would be to Grzegorz, and I've noted it down some time ago. Right now, one of our biggest fans on LinkedIn also asked that question. So off-shelf solutions, how would you compare things that we do usually at Netguru? So made to measure, of course, we first deeply research the market, see what is going on and where. But if you were to compare, especially focusing on virtual try-ons, off-shelf solutions and the ones that are made to measure, what are the ups and downs of both of these?
Sure. Basically, when you take a look at the off-the-shelf solution, they are targeted at many different customers. So when you have specific demand on being totally authentic, much more authentic than all your competitors, the off-the-shelf solution may not be something for you. It is definitely an interesting starting point, but if you want to do something extra, like super authentic, when you want to have some additional conditions For example, that you do not want to upload 3D models of all your products, but you just want to upload a single photo. If you have a specific line of products that is not present in your competitors' businesses, and you want to introduce that to a virtual try-on solution. And these are all the cases when you would rather consider a custom solution. Or, for example, when you have a very specific customer journey in mind, and you want to address a specific part of that customer journey, so we can integrate in the best way. For example, when you have a solution from just from the shelf, it will rather not take an advantage that you can standardize the light in your brick and mortar shop, for example. And this is something that you can easily achieve with a custom solution. So it may bring you some additional advantages over your competitors, though it may not be the best choice for an MVP. But that's actually up to you. Whether you see it as your competitive advantage, you want to invest into that, it is supposed to be your unique point, or it is something that you just want to have like a gadget on your web page. For example, when you have something on your web page, it is rather supposed to scale. The authenticity is not necessarily the main target, or at least not at this stage. Especially if you start with a narrow set of products. So it may be sufficient to use just off-the-shelf product.
Jinger, would you like to add anything on that topic?
I don't think I can add anything that's going to challenge Grzegorz, to be honest. Personally, I think the experience really needs to be considered. I think one of the questions earlier was what not to do, and that's the idea of novelty. And I think some brands have fallen into that trap where it doesn't give any experience benefits whatsoever, right? So it's there as a extra thing to do, but it doesn't really help me as a consumer trying to achieve certain jobs.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to shape that by starting the starting on a blank canvas in essence.
Yes, I would strongly agree with that. Even though Apple is introducing AR Kit, Google is introducing AR Core. These are solutions that definitely will push things forward a little bit, and I think we'll benefit all from that because some innovations will definitely took place every now and then. But I totally agree with both of you have just mentioned, is that we have to focus on the customer journey. We have to deeply think through, is the idea that we have really that part of the customer journey, or whether it should be implemented maybe elsewhere. And after we do that, then we can focus on designing the solution, on designing the product, and only after that we can think of an MVP that will probably in different scenarios take few weeks to at least few weeks to do. I know I don't want Grzegorz to push it too much, because I know that sometimes it might take months, especially with made-to-measure solutions that require high resolution.
Yeah, it definitely depends on a specific customer journey that we want to address, and a specific assumptions that we have or expectations towards this virtual try-on. The more authenticity we want, the more details we want to put in the solution, like taking care of those light reflections, like taking care of the resolution, taking care of different kinds of moving hand, for example, at many different angles, and scalability, that you want to upload your new products easily, etc., without retraining and rebuilding whole project. There are different aspects to take into account, and the more your expectations, the longer it may take to develop such a solution. The MVP, when you go down in the resolution, when you go down with the FPS, for example, may be something quick to address, especially with new devices. When you go up with the expectations, it will require some more time.
Yes, I can fully understand that, even though Jinger sometimes wants to create an MVP that will take 3 days and can be presented to our clients. Me, myself, I like this attitude as well, but I'm fully aware that sometimes it takes some time. I could maybe also still ask you that, guys. We've got like still 3 minutes. If we go past 4, nothing bad will happen, I believe. And if I could ask you guys, do you see any exciting solutions, feasible solutions on the market besides what we have just discussed when it comes to virtual try-ons? So a completely different attitude. What I was thinking about myself is maybe if it took that many years to get to the place where we're at right now, and maybe changing the attitude a little bit. Maybe it's not about, we shouldn't focus on fully presenting the product the way it is in great resolution, number of FPSs, but rather keeping it simple. So let's say the biggest concern of our customer is whether this yellow jacket will match his trousers or will match her skin tone. Why not focus on that and make it a little bit simple? I see it like presenting the yellow jacket right next to my face, and I could actually compare the skin tone to the color of the jacket, maybe cutting the whole customer journey and cutting all the concerns that our customer have into smaller pieces and focusing on these. What do you think? Or maybe some other solution that comes to your mind.
I mean, to a point, I agree. But then if we're thinking about it becoming a purchasing channel, then we need that quality. We need that realism, right? And to be honest, and Grzegorz, correct me if I'm wrong, the technology is accelerating. And, because of the situation we find ourselves in since last year, retailers have been forced to actually take this gambit, right? Personally, when it comes to, and I'm not sure if I 100% understood the analogy, David, so correct me if I'm wrong. But if you want to compare skin tone and colors, I think that would be quite a straightforward step. And I think we're likely to see that anyway. So it's almost that idea of visual search that will eventually be more commonplace than it is now. But if I go back to like one thing that I think could potentially really push virtual try-ons, I'm going to combine your question with Tomet's. So going back to Helen's point, and I think it's that point of body scanning, and ideally this would come into play via mobile one day in a convenient way. But if you get that proper body scan, then the fit can be more correct than it is today.
Yeah, that's an interesting attitude. What I mentioned is that what I meant by what I said was that maybe if we cut the whole customer journey, maybe if we cut the concerns that our customers have and ask them what is actually what they expect, maybe, that's what we do usually at Netguru. So focusing on the value brought to our customers, and maybe that value is not specifically a great resolution product. Maybe it's something in between, something that will still play the role, but might be quite simpler. Of course, I agree that thanks to the technology acceleration, we can do crazy stuff. We already do that at Netguru when it comes to augmented reality. And that's where Grzegorz shows up. Grzegorz, would you like to add maybe anything to that topic?
Well, we definitely focus on how the solution should be implemented, what are the specific concerns. Because if we are just supposed to, for example, try on something that is really small on the image, we do not need to pre-process whole photo. We just need to process that small part of the photo. And so it depends on what is actual concern of virtual try-on, whether we need like 100% authenticity, if you need a shadow on the background or something like that. This may of course bring you additional complexity into the project. It may make it bigger, more expensive, etc. So well, that's something that users will rather not require you to have, and they will not expect the shadow on the background, but it is something that could be developed for sure. So going into more general stuff, we have different aspects that we should consider. For example, it may be also sufficient and to provide a better solution in terms of sizing a person when we want to propose a specific product and reduce, for example, the return rate. When you buy shoes, 80% of the shoes which are returned are returned because of the wrong size. So maybe some kind of a solution that improves the size and matching the shoes to your feet would actually make the job, instead of providing a virtual try-on experience. It could also be connected one to another, so you can have both solutions if that's relevant to your client. But that's actually up to you, and that's up to specific analysis that you can carry out. What is really important for your customers, how it could boost your user journey.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mentioned. And when it comes to shoes, we can see that there are already such solutions on the market where you could specifically check what size of shoes should you buy online, and they are doing well on the market. Yes, Jinger, please.
One final thing to add from me. So that also for me is an example of why bespoke development might sometimes be a better option as well, because you can create it in a way that it evolves, right? Which isn't always possible with off-the-shelf options, right? Grzegorz, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be a blocker. So now that, we can evolve, and as the technology improves, we want to make the experience better and better. That's where bespoke solutions have a major trump card to play over off-the-shelf solutions.
Yes, I confirm. Yet it requires being careful when designing the solution and pretty good understanding of what's the actual problem, because still you can develop a bespoke solution that is so rigid that you will need to develop it from scratch. If you pick the wrong technique, even if it will work for a specific kind of a product, even if it works for a specific use case that your customers have. But for example, you did not foresee that you want to add a specific kind of a product and you need to rebuild it from scratch. This happens as long as you do not take additional assumptions at the beginning that, for example, you want to grow your library of products. You want to evolve just from trying on rings also to bracelets, that you want to move also then to necklaces, etc., etc. This can already bias the solution or bias the people who are making the solution into a specific direction. So they develop something flexible enough that it will actually work for all those cases, but will not need to be designed from scratch in each and every case.
Yeah, so that's actually both the upside and the downside of a made-to-measure solutions, because on one side you have bigger ownership, you can do whatever you want with that, you can deeply think it through. On the other side, when it comes to computing, when it comes to possibility, when it comes to input, sometimes the solutions that are already there or that we have already implemented might seem even better. Okay, so I think, guys, that would be all for today. I would like to thank our audience for everything that showed up during our talk. I think we can divide the questions between the three of us and answer them on LinkedIn, especially the ones that haven't been answered yet. I would like to thank you guys for joining me for this part of Disruption Talk. I would like to tell our audience that we are here for them, so we will share our LinkedIn profiles whenever somebody has an idea, has a question, feel free to reach out to us. If you have an idea for a virtual try-on solution, reach out to us. Let's build it together. We can make it happen. We have, I believe, have actually presented, we have great minds focusing strictly on that topic as well. And what else can I say? Thank you, Jinger. Thank you, Grzegorz. If you would like to add something more, if not, I believe maybe Disruption Pact focused on virtual try-ons part 2 might take place sometime soon. We will figure out. And to our audience, see you next Tuesday for the episode on UX with our special guest from N26. Yeah, and that would be all from us right now. Thank you all. Once again.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
See you soon.